begun coming to the YouTube? Rai Sahab, आप भी आ जाइए.
Sir, we are
Rai
live.
Sahab,
Please
please
start.
come on the video. Yarinder Rai, Dr. Rai, please come on video. Come on YouTube. Sorry, come on video.
Sir, we are live. Please start.
Okay. Okay. So thank you, audience. We welcome you. Today we are back again with a very interesting topic, as we promised around 3 months ago, almost a quarter of the year. And today this fortunate time has come. Fortunate time has come for us, and we have distinguished scholar from Iran who is serving now in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, Dr. Ramin. I tell you an interesting story of mine with the term Ramin. When I was there in Dubai, working for the Dubai airport, an engineer from airport side, he was helping me. His name was Ramin, Muhammad Ramin. I do not remember his surname, but he was Ramin. And one day he took me to speak to the Director General of Police, the internal security of the Dubai. He was also Ramin at the same time. So this term struck me. What is special about the term? And then I made a Google search, and what I found is during the same time, Israel's Minister of External Affairs, the foreign minister, he was also named with the same term, Ramin. So what I understood, the term Ramin is cross-cultural and also the cross-linguistic term, but I did not understand the meaning of the term Ramin. So one day, out of curiosity, that was my last day in the Dubai airport, I happened to ask him, with due respect, my dear friend, if you do not mind, I would like to ask you, what is the meaning of your name, Ramin? Because yes, coming from India, I was connecting, my subconscious was connecting Ramin to Rama. So he said that I do not know exactly name or the meaning of Arabic meaning of the term Ramin, but what is special is that the term is very popular, and the elite families of Middle East, this name is taken. So that is what is his input. When I came back here in 2010, India, and I flipped through the pages of the Ramayana. I purchased a Sanskrit Ramayana of the Valmiki, and there I found a connecting link in which when Rama uses his Dhanush bow and the arrow drops in somewhere in the Middle East, and there is oil and gas and these lubricants called sneha. The sneha padartha means lubricant elements, uh, lubricant element items getting produced. That is what is there in the Valmiki Ramayana. So just that was the interesting story. Dr. Ramin will enlighten us. And today we have formed a distinguished panel. Our chief guest was calling distinguished panel, in which Honorable Gurudev Professor Inbandu Pandeji is there. He is our global president for the researchers, and Dr. B.R. Mani is there. You know, he is the synonym, a reflection of Indian archaeology. He is also a member of our board of eminence. And from Mauritius, Thailand Ramkishan, he is joining. He is a strong man over there in Mauritius social activities, social services, intellectual things, and also he's an investor. He wanted to invest in Ayodhya. That is about Thailand Ramkishan. And as for the format, I would request to Praveen ji to introduce our all the guests with honor. I see one more uh, scholar joining us. Uh, uh, I would request, sir, you also please introduce us in the due course of time, because we have to honor every guest, every scholar today who has who is gracing us in today's session. So over to Praveen ji.
Thank you, Lalitji. Thank you. First, I congratulate everyone for the Teachers' Day because you all are our teachers. On the behalf of Indology Foundation, I congratulate Dr. B.R. Mani, Dr. Ramin, Dr. Professor Gurudev, all of you for the Teachers' Day. Now, I welcome our chief guest. Indology Foundation have the honor to have Dr. Lavkush Dwivedi as our chief guest for today's session. Dr. Dwivedi, as director of Ayodhya Shro Sansthan, the premier institution set by the government of Uttar Pradesh for conducting the researches concerning history and legacy of Ayodhya, the ancient capital of Ikshavaku. He has 25 years of experience in various distinguished positions as an
सर
academician,
मैं आपको वीडियो
as
में
an
लगा
administrator, as a
आपका
researcher,
आपका इंट्रोडक्शन चल रहा है जी
and MA Ancient Indian History, Culture, Archaeology, and DPhil, both from the University of Allahabad. He has worked as Registrar of Bundelkhand Music Institute of a deemed university, Deputy Director, Department of Information, Varanasi for the UP government, and numerous experience as a registering officer with the Department of Culture, Government of UP. He has also been Assistant Director, Golden Jubilee Cell, Uttar Pradesh government. He has been in charge of Swatantrata Sangram Senani Sangralaya, Meerut. He is also reviewer in the board of ICHR, Government of India, and Regional Archaeological Officer, Department of Culture for Varanasi. His researches include various interesting topics of ancient as well as modern history. I would like to quote a few significant works: Slavery in Ancient India, Kalanjar, a historical and culture profile, Vande Mataram, it is a monogram on the restricted on banned sound by the British during the Indian freedom struggle. He has also published Ramayana, Kalin, Sanskrit ke Tattva. A warm welcome to our chief guest, Dr. Lavkush Dwivedi. Welcome, sir. Welcome. Now I am introduced Honorable Dr. B.R. Mani. Dr. B.R. Mani is a renowned archaeologist, a reflection of almost every archaeological excavation held in last 30 years. He has been worked as a Director General in Archaeological Survey of India, Director General National Museum, New Delhi, Vice Chancellor National Museum Institute, New Delhi. There are dozens of books on his credit on Indian history and culture. He is also great scholar of Sanskrit and Pali literature. He is also a distinguished member in the board of Eminence Indology Foundation, New Delhi. Welcome, sir. Now I introduce Honorable Gurudev, Professor Deen Bandhu Pandey. Professor Deen Bandhu Pandey is an iconic figure of ancient history and archaeology with a special focus and emphasis on the Gupta period of Indian history. But he has also worked on medieval period of history, particularly Aine Akbari and Shane Nama of Persia. He is board of member of ICSSR and he has also been a member of ICHR, India's premier institute of social science and history. He is the president of Global Research for Indology Foundation. Professor Pandey is celebrated author of History of Ram, Janbhumi, Ayodhya, The Greek Appraisal of Indian Art, which is coming shortly, and book on Kekai. He is widely regarded for his research on the Battle of Alexander and Porus, in which he proved Porus was actually the winner of the battle. Now, I welcome Honorable Dr. Ramin Hazan Fad. Dr. Ramin Hazan Fad is a renowned art historian. He is currently working with the University of Pendi Deccan Sultan Idris in Perak, Malaysia, as a senior lecturer. His main area of research is in medieval India miniature painting with a secondary emphasis on interfaith dialogue during the Mughal Empire of India. His MA was on peace painting, resulting in the following article: Iranian Painters for Peace, Peace Review, a Journal of Social Justice. Is a multiple entries to his credit to highly reputed encyclopedias. His six entries for the great events in religion and encyclopedia of pivotal events in religious history, and five entries for the great Islamic encyclopedia in Persian. Dr. Hazanna Fahad has published articles in both Persian and English languages. He has also translated multiple books, articles, and book chapters about music, art, and philosophy into Persian language. He is award-winning teacher, author, and scholar for his various publications in Iran. I last welcome all the guests who are watching the session through YouTube Live. I welcome to all of you, sir. I'll welcome you.
Thank you very much. And namaste. Good morning to all my friends. And in fact, I think
Dr. Amin, I would request, before we pass on to the baton to you, because our chief guest, Dr. Lavkus Dwivedi ji, to tell few words. Unfortunately, he is facing technical problems, so we will have his voice only. Over to Dr. Lavkus Dwivedi ji.
okay.
Dr. Saab. Dr. Saab, now session is on. Please, we would request you to grace us with your speech. Hello, sir. Yes, sir. Please continue, sir. Is it audible?
No, sir. Please keep your phone on speaker on, sir, so we can hear him.
Okay. Should I start? Or still we have to wait?
Mishraji can add his message and let it start because we have already wasted half an hour.
Sir, आपको video record कर लेंगे. Actually, it is very our chief guest is facing a lot of problems. It is very awkward. So I would request Dr. Amin to please continue, sir. We will not waste any moment now.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm so sorry that Ms. Dr. Lavkush could not join us due to these problems. Anyway, I would like to thank you, Dr. Lavkush Dwivedi, and also I would like to thank you, Mr. Lalit Mishra, for managing the things. And I would like to take this as a good omen today. Happy Teachers' Day to all my friends there in India. In fact, today is Teachers' Day, and this is a good omen and coincidence. And let's start, because now we have already lost half an hour, and I'll try to make it as short as possible. And first of all, I have to confess that any talk about, in fact, the Indian culture and art and history could be compared to talk about an ocean, and my knowledge or any person's knowledge could be compared to like a knowledge about a drop from this ocean. And here I would like to share my screen and immediately go into my topic. Let's share. Just please let me know once you can see my screen. And as you know, my topic today is about Persian manuscripts of the Ramayana, and with a focus on illustrations. And before that, I will talk about the translation, the starting point of the translation of the Ramayana, which in fact took place in the Mughal era, as you know, during Akbar's reign. And talking about this issue, I mean, the Ramayana as a sacred Hindu book or text, it's good to talk about the cultural diversity, to bear in mind, in our mind, about the cultural diversity which have been existed in India from ancient times up to now. It has the cradle of this approach, in fact, India. And this cultural diversity, which is mixed with the cultural diversity of those who used to reign in India, is very important for producing great works of art like Taj, as you see here. And in this line, talking about the religious tolerance, which was common almost all around the Mughal era, except some minor occasions, especially talking about Akbar. And now we are starting our point with Akbar, and we will talk a bit about why this all happened, about some issues regarding to this. And those days in Iran, during Safavids era, in fact, during the reign of the second Safavid Emperor Shah Tahmasp, who reigned almost 50 years, half a century, but in the middle of his reign, his taste and approach and attitudes changed. And in the second part, he was no more interested in art, music, literature, and this and that. So as a patron, he was no more the patron of artists. So many of them immigrated from Iran. Some went to the Ottoman Empire in the West, and some immigrated to India. And here there is a verse from an Iranian poet, Muhammad Ghalami Tehrani Salim. Muhammad Ghalami Tehrani Salim from 7th century. He was not very famous, but he is talking about those issues regarding art and artistic activities. نیست در ایران زمین سامان تحصیل کمال تا نیامد سوی هندوستان حنا رنگین نشد. No good opportunity exists in Iran for accomplishment. Hana, this natural pigment, won't show its color unless you reach India. So this shows that at that time India was like an utopia, like a sacred place for artists and those people. This was not just limited to our time. He's talking about that, and in this line, as you know, the second Mughal emperor Humayun wrote with himself when he came back again to India from his exile in Iran. Some artists, namely Mir Sayyid Ali and Abdul Samad Shirazi, two master miniature painters from Persian court to India, and those were very important and pivotal in foundation of Mughal miniature painting. And talking about the Mughals' cultural attitudes, which is very important in this issue. In fact, they were from Central Asia with their background from those area, northwestern of those days, Iran, northern part of the Afghanistan, and you know, Babur in his writings is complaining about the issues and what he preferred and this and that, but they were mostly based on Persian culture and their official language, although they were Turks, but in their courts they used to talk in Persian, and also, of course, their religion was Islam, but now you can see that these people came from that place, their cultural, religious backgrounds to India and this place. Again, talking about those, their religion and more specifically about the Akbar, you can see that I'm talking about the Sulh-e-Kul and this universal peace or absolute peace. I have written a text about this. It's available, and you know, this was a kind of mostly political approach of his syncretism, and again, his talking about religious issues of his tendencies regarding to other religions. He managed some talk with priests from different religions like Hindus, like Jesuits, from Christians, and the Zoroastrians, and so on. And at the end, he himself reached to this conclusion as something like the religion of God or Dini Ilahi, or which was in fact one kind of harmonious relationship among different religions. These are very important for us to take note. We are talking about these issues from more than 500 years ago. We are not talking about our age or modern times or these issues in our time. We are talking about those days, and we have to compare those issues at that day, although this was not just something that invented by him.
The voice is very slow.
Is it slow?
Yes.
You cannot hear me good?
It is slow.
Dr. Ramin, it is okay, but you know, slightly loud, please. That will be more comfortable for us.
Yeah.
Okay. If it's still like this, I can use my headset. Maybe that would be better if it continues. Okay. So regarding these issues, I was talking about this, that in fact was not just for the first time in India. You know better than me that this was an approach and has been always in India, you know, from those ancient times, from Ashoka and even before him during those days. But he was very famous and, you know, salient in these regards. I mean, syncretism in contrast with separatism. And these are the basic foundation with these issues. I'm talking about the Ramayana in Persian and these Akbari manuscripts, which were from myths, history, religion, and these things were all in Persian, the official language, and mostly illustrated, those manuscripts. And the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, first time translated by him at around the late 16th century. And Abul Fazl here is very good that said that for some people of the court who were involved in producing the translation of the Ramayana, such as Abul Fazl, the job might have the function of a book of advice to the king. This is a good point regarding the translation of those myths. So when we are talking about these translations, we are talking about different multiple perspectives. Sometimes this is some interpretation that this was based on his own taste. Of course, it was because he was the patron and he was the king or the emperor, but multiple perspectives like his own tendency, his background in his younghood, and those who helped to raise him, and his political issues and attitudes. He was faced with a huge population of Hindus, and this was a political, in fact, perspective, as well as here that Dr. Supriya Gandhi proposes that from the Abul Fazl narrates that this was a book of advice to the king. So I mean that when we are talking about the translation of the Ramayana, we have to consider different perspectives. And here I have gathered more than 24 texts, more than 24 versions of the Persian translation. As you can see, the first one happened in the court of Akbar by Abdul Qadir Badauni and several others. This was in fact a trend that the credit used to come to one person, in fact, and it happened in around late 16th century. After this translation, there is another translation which is very famous, but this is in verse, very nice, by Sheikh Sa'adullah Panipati, which is called mostly famous as Masih. And as you can see from the title, this is Masnavi Ram Vasita, Masnavi Ram Vasita. The title is somehow changed to more romantic, aspect of this story. And this is, again, different perspectives of patrons and also translators. And another version, I will come back to this one more in detail as an example, by Girdahas, is again very famous, and as well as Nargisistan. And what is important here is that, some of them are in prose, some of them are in verse, and some of them are both in prose and verse. And this was very, interesting and amazing job by Persian and also now is Persian translators or writers to mix verse with prose. And the most famous example of this approach can be seen in Gulistan Sa'adi, Gulistan by Sa'adi, famous Persian poet and writer. So I would say that some of these texts are in prose, some of them in verse, and some of them a mixture of these two. I don't want to waste your time to talk about all of this. Just mention about this issue. There are different. I will come back to the Masih and the another one. These 24 versions were mentioned by Professor Fathullah Mujtabai, and a very important and famous Iranian Indologist, in his book in detail, as well as other books like the Mahabharata and some others. Just here in number 16, Wazife Faiz, an abridged verse translation. You know, this is interesting that it's starting point is ای خالق هل بلند و پستی و ای خالق نیستی و هستی. O the creator of every high and low play, existence and non-existent. And I would like to move to this issue that I will talk more about this, that although these translations were translations of the Ramayana and the story, but the core story remains. But the taste, the religious background of the translator now can be seen, and we will see that interestingly, in one of these old translations, we will see that the first folio is starting with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of God the Merciful. You know, this is a very famous Islamic phrase. And here, when he says, "Oh, the creator of every high and low place," in fact, we do not have this in the original Valmiki's Ramayana, but this is an amalgamation or the mixture of Islamic attitudes of the translator with the main, story. Regarding to Masih's translation, in fact, this was published in Lucknow, and also this was in the verse in the form of the Mathnavi. This was, as I told you, this was not just word by word adaptation, and the story is mostly focused on the love story episodes, mostly focused on the love story or romantic episodes. And you can see here one example of the Masih's text in one manuscript. This is a manuscript. We will talk about more about the illustrations and some features of the Masih's translation, which also can be seen in other translation in some different degrees. Some, here we have the praising of Islam's prophet. This is interesting. We are talking about the Ramayana, but how the praising of the Islam prophet Muhammad can be seen in the Ramayana, but this is something that we can see. In one page we can see دل از عشق محمد ریش دارم رقابت با خدای خویش دارم. I am full of love with Muhammad, and in this line I'm competing with God. So this is something that we can see in his translation. So praising Islam's prophet can be seen in some of these texts. He's talking about his own life. He's talking about his own life. جوانی گشت صرف باده جام شدم پامال و زهر گلندام به پیری خوش ندارم ناز مخلوق نخواهم عاشقی را جز تو معشوق. He's talking about his younghood, his story. During younghood, I was busy with wine and love, but in old age, I'm not into expressing love to creatures and just want to be in love with you, my beloved one, or you creator, something like this. He's talking about his life. He's talking about praising Islam's prophet. He's expressing admiration to his patron, to some sages, to some colleagues, جهان نو زنده گشت از حسن تدبیر به عدل شاه نورالدین جهانگیر. He's talking about Jahangir, the son of Akbar, who in fact dedicated this copy to him. The word revived of your well management from your justice, O King Nuruddin Jahangir. So expressing admiration to some Sufis also can be seen, or some of his colleagues, some of others, poets. And another aspect, his love towards Indian land, his own expression. مرا باید ز هندوستان سخن گفت که با عشق است خاک این زمین جفت. I have to talk about India, that love is twined with this land. He's talking about his admiration, his passion about India. And at the end, some Persian and Islamic terms we can see here and there in his translation, in his text, like Siyavush, like Mani. These are some old mythical, Mani is an old ancient Iranian prophet from the 3rd century. Siyavush is a king, is a prince, in fact, from the Shahnameh, or Khidr is a prophet in Islamic, and Semitic approach. He's talking about Jesus, Moses, Adam, and Gabriel, Jibreel. So we can see this amalgamation of his background and his admiration and his expression in this translation. And this is one example of this list, and we can see somehow similar approach in other texts. I would like to here to present Professor Amir Hossein Zekrugou, who fortunately is now present here among us from Iran. He's from Iran, but he has been, in fact, more than 20 years in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur. And this is a good news for all of you who are, somehow concerned about the Ramayana. And this is, in fact, although there were more than this, about 51 narrations of the Ramayana, but these 24 were in detail, mentioned by Dr. Mujtabai. But regardless of those narrations, if we consider 24 in our talk, I would like to say that the 25th, the new upcoming version, is written, the first annotated and illustrated Ramayana by Professor Amir Hossein Zekrugou in 83 chapters. I hope that we will see these, I don't know, maybe in one volume or more than one volume as soon as possible. But I related to, he was in fact my supervisor, and I used to study my PhD. But this is his latest contribution, and some features of this. I will show you some pictures. This is his style of writing. His style of writing is a very expert both in English and writing and Persian, and his own style is very vivid. This and enrichment of prose with poetry. This is, in fact, in some parts he has brought from these texts, especially from Masih, and with his own writings, wherever is need to, as an ornament, as when maybe it's very important, he has brought some verses from Masih and other texts, or some parts. And another, these comprehensive elaborations from different versions. This is an Indologist with his, vast knowledge about different versions of the Ramayana, from Valmiki to Tulsidas, and he has elaborated his writing. with this knowledge, with this comprehensive and wide perspective, and illustrations also are presented here to help the viewer and to help the reader to understand better, and we can see this later. At the end, he have a glossary of terms and location and these things. And this is two examples of his upcoming, although this is not just, this is a sample. After editing, we will see more fashionable, but this you can see on the left, we have a one painting from Abdul Rahim's Khanams. I will talk about this, and in below you can see the explanation of this specific episode. On the right, you can see on top, this is the main part or the main text in 2 lines. The remaining point, this is the Shangri-La Ramayana, an example related to this episode, as well as the explanation, annotations regarding this specific episode. Anyway, talking about translation, first we are talking about Akbar and late 16th century, the first Persian translated of the Ramayana took place at his reign by his order, and it contains 176 illustrations, and it's kept in Swaiman Singh in Jaipur. And this is not a very easy task to have access to this specific manuscript due to some policies there. And I can say that Dr. Ashok Kumar Das many years ago could have access to that for a limited time, just allowing to take some black and white pictures. After that, I will show you one work by Dr. Amina Okada. I will show you. So anyway, this manuscript is not very easy to have access. It was a very matter of debate and challenge for those researchers of the field. And form and content, let's talk about this. And these Persian Safavid norms exist in this manuscript. I'm talking about now about the miniature paintings and this amalgamation of abstract Persian, norms and conventions. Indian, more naturalistic view starts from this, but mostly in this copy we are talking about Safavid norms. And what is important again here is the subject. In these model, in fact, texts and the manuscripts or interpretations of the Ramayana in terms of visual interpretation, I will show you that we have mostly those romantic, mostly those battle scenes, rather than when we compare these manuscripts with those manuscripts which were produced in provincial or Hindu courts. Like this one, as a survey about the themes of this Akbar's Ramayana from 176, we have 28 paintings from the court scenes, 28 paintings. We have 7 scenes from romance. In fact, this is very low. But battle scenes, this is very important that you can see 78 paintings of this are dedicated to battle scenes. This is a very, important feature why they chose these themes. This shows their tendency, their interpretation, their understandings. I'm sure that if you investigate about those the same episodes in provincial manuscripts, you can see that maybe romance and religious or divine scenes are the upper hand. But here, 78, only 78 are dedicated to battle scenes, psychological, political issues you can investigate and you can guess why. So ritual scenes here are 11 only, and divine scenes, you know, those paintings that represent various episodes in which Hindu gods such as Indra or Brahma are depicted. These are divine scenes. There are only 14, and other scenes are 38. So I will talk about this. This is one example of the Akbar. I told you that it's not easy to have access to all those paintings originally in color. This is in fact colorful, but this photo is only in black and white. But what is important here, you can see that almost all part of the canvas or the paper is occupied with ornaments, with you know, visual elements. Almost there is no empty place, and this is a very common in Persian Safavid norms, and that is something that I talked about this. This is fortunately one colorful that I could have access, in fact, many years ago. And you can see the profile view of all creatures, not only just human beings, but also if you take note to the faces of these monkeys, you can see that they are depicted from the profile. So almost it's very, very rare to see in Mughal painting a face from a full view or even in three-quarter, mostly in profile. And this is something which was in fact the effect of Indian native convention of Indian painting. I mean, the profile view. And you can see in this part, we have a text accompanying related to the exact episode which is shown in the painting. And Akbar, when he died, this is some claim by Dr. John Saylor, you know, famous scholar of the field, that his library had 24 volumes, 24,000, and the value 6,500,000 rupees, and he's claiming that this was 3 times as much as his expenditure in building the city of Fatehpur Sikri. This is something amazing. This is something amazing that shows their tendency, their attention toward the texts and the manuscripts and their libraries. You know, the second emperor of the Mughals, Humayun, just fell from the steps of his library, and this is one, you know, interpretation. This is something that shows their attention toward knowledge, library, and the production of the books. And from Persia to India, I talked about the forms and the style and these abstract forms of the Persian Safavid norms. And when it came to India, for instance, in the first manuscript from Akbar, we will see that these Safavid conventions are prevalent, but little by little, they are mixing more with Indian norms, which at the end reached to a sophisticated form of the Mughal miniature painting. And you can see, and you can compare these two from the same episode, from the Indrajit, you know, those arrows, and on the left, you can see Akbar's interpretation of this. I mean, the Akbar's Ramayana manuscript, and on the right side, this is from the manuscript of Abdul Rahim Khan Khanan's, Akbar's prime minister. And you can see that on the right, we have more free spaces. And this is the effect of Indian and especially Rajasthan and this and that. And we will see later. I will talk more about this. And the second was from, again, the same atelier related to that for Akbar's mother, Hamida Banu Begum's, and with 56 miniatures. And what is very interesting regarding these issues, some scholars claim that Hamida Banu compared herself with Sita, who accompanied her husband, Lord Rama, during his exile to the forest, because Humayun also was forced to go to Iran, and the Sita, Akbar just she gave birth Akbar during this hard time and then sent him to Kabul. But anyway, some people interpret this as she compared herself with Sita and her husband Humayun as Lord Rama. And maybe this shows her, passion about this story. And maybe that was the reason that she ordered, or she asked her son to provide or produce another manuscript or version copy for herself. We will see some of them. And this Ramayana of the Hamida Banu Begum, fortunately, just published last year in Qatar, in Doha. In fact, this copy is almost whole in Qatar, except several pages, 2 or 3 in Copenhagen, in Denmark, and in Switzerland and the Khalili. But the rest are fortunately in Qatar Museum of Islamic Art in Qatar. And Dr. John Saylor, Dr. Marika Sardar, and Dr. Audrey Trushki contributed for gathering and investigating and research on this, and it was published in 22, and it's available, fortunately. And I'm not talking too much. I think that maybe we can finish within 1 hour or something like this. I will try to talk about these features on the paintings. This is one painting from Hamida Banu Begum's, and you can see the difference here. Again, we have 3/4 view from the faces, some faces, and Dr. Linda Leach in one book is mentioning, you can see those coquettish and those cute cats here. There are 2 cats here you can see, and she, as a scholar, suggests that this was because of the recipient or the patron of this, in fact, manuscript, which was a woman. Maybe the artist was, into producing something more mellow, sweet, or with the help of these coquettish, cats or kittens. And you can see that, again, still the presence of Persian conventions here is vivid in this tree, cypress tree, and these parts like 2-dimensional, as well as these parts in the carpet or the mosaics. But the tendency toward Indian naturalism from the shape of the bodies and their emotions and their moods are very clear here. This is a famous and very nice, I am in love with this. In fact, this is from the Hamida Banu Begum. This is when Hanuman meets Sita in exile, and she refused first. And you can see that again, different aspects of style are presented here. In the pools or the gardens, you can see the exact two-dimensional approach as well as the carpet, but you can see on the upper part or the architectural elements, this tendency towards showing perspective or three-dimension is vivid, as well as, you know, these draperies, which are depicted very delicately here. And the other copy from the Abdul Rahim, which I talked about, that which was in fact the second or the third, at about the same time, and the Nabi Khan wrote the text with the help of some other people. In fact, those translators, many of them were not themselves, you know, master in Sanskrit, and they helped other scholars, other Hindu scholars who were also, you know, familiar with Persian. And I'm not talking about this copy. I will show you some of those paintings. It contains the 130 miniatures. In some resources, it was claimed that originally it had 135, but now what is, you know, available in freer and secular in the US. Most of them are there, and there are 130 miniatures. And again, regarding the themes, court scenes are 23, romance are only 3, but again, we have battle scenes 45. Rituals 10 and divine 11. So again, battle scenes are the first and the most, you know, important or interesting things for those patrons. And this was very available, very good in this book, Workshop and Patron in Mughal India, the Freer Ramayana and the other illustrated. In fact, this is written by Dr. John Saylor. The title of this book is Workshop and Patron. It has derived from his own PhD thesis, dissertation, which was specifically dedicated to Abdul Rahim Khan Khanan's, in fact, Ramayana. And this book is extracted from his thesis with adding some other manuscripts, but as a book which is now available for us, I would recommend to look at it. But if you want to have access to the Abdul Rahim Khan Khanan's Ramayana, I would suggest to find Dr. John Saylor's PhD thesis, which is specifically dedicated to Abdul Rahim's copy. But as a book, which you can find it, I don't know, a very great part of that Abdul Rahim's manuscript is reflected in this book. And some, you know, characteristics of these paintings are, you know, as better know that for these paintings were the production of many hands. Even one painting was not mostly the production of one person. We had some people who used to draw another person for coloring. Maybe there was a person who was master in drawing the faces and the other person for other parts or this and that. But still we can see these various forms. This is from the face of the Lord Rama, as I identified, at least for this manuscript, we have 3 different versions, 3 different, you know, faces. So this was a common trend. This was a common trend. And what is important regarding to the amalgamation or the effect of Persian conventions, this is a comparison between a Persian scene and the Ramayana by Abdul Rahim. Although the themes or the stories are different, but you can see a very interesting similarities between depiction of the scenes and the visual elements. You can see here the horses and these hills, and those people are hidden just behind the hills and looking at the field. These are on the left from the Ramayana, an episode from Abdul Rahim's copy, and on the right we have one episode from Muhammad Juki's Shahnameh. This is Gushtas play. This is playing polo, but you can see very similarities between these two, and this is very good example of showing these similarities, these effects of these two cultures regarding to paintings, miniature painting. Again, we have another example from, this is a divine scene as well as other visual elements from the Abdul Rahim's Ramayana. Anyway, this one is very interesting regarding that. If you can see to this person, the owner of this cow, Shabala, and you can see that his face is interestingly from a full, profile or full view. This is very rare. This is a very rare trend or approach in Persian and in mobile miniature painting, as well as traditional Indian. Okay, let me talk. This one is from Abdul Rahim. This is a very nice cultural issue. You can see that here, this is a detail from this. On the left, we have the full page. On the right, we have the detail. This is Hoa Rahim. Hoa Rahim, this is in Persian regarding, to God, and again to the patron who was Abdul Rahim. But this isn't just, something that is Islamic. And I would like to say that although you could see in the translation, we had the praising of Prophet and the Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim or these things. But in miniatures, in paintings, also we have this trend, not only in mobile miniature painting, but also in other. This is from one copy of the Shahnameh. The story is from Persian myths, Rudabe, but you can see here is written Ya Mufattihul Abwab. This is a characteristic attribution to God, and you can see La ilaha illallah. There is no God but Allah. So this is a slogan for most important for Muslims. But you can see this amalgamation of two cultures, two traditions, or the background of the painter, his religion, his view is now shown in this painting or this epitaph. There were no relation to Islam. It was a myth from pre-Islamic, But I want to say that this trend of mixing these cultural and the religious issues were common not only in texts but also in the paintings. You can see here on the wall Hoa Rahim, and you can see here these Islamic things to Shahnameh. Okay, let me talk about one interesting. Okay, after 100 years, more than 100 years, now we are in the year 1715 in the reign of Emperor Farrukhsiyar. Again, we can see that another translation, another production of the Ramayana happens in India, in New Delhi, with 258 miniatures. If you want to find this, was translated by Somer Chand, from the Valmiki's Ramayana by the order of the Farsiya. You can make a contact with Rampur Raza Library in Rampur. And what is important here is you can see that these strict profile and the paintings of this are absolutely different for compared to those from Akbar's court, Akbar's atelier, or Abdul Rahim, or the other one. So you can see here again, this is the first folio of Farrokh Siyar's Ramayana. You can see these golden ornaments, but it is starting with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, in the name of God. You know, this Islamic slogan. As I talked, I don't want to talk more about this. I just show you. And here, in most of these paintings, we have the painting in the lower part, and on the upper above, we have the text, and that specific text regarding to the direct message or the direct episode of the page is written in red. So when you see here red, that is why. These red parts are just directly related. And you can see this is the absolutely Rajasthani style from the Rajasthan, and this is completely different with Persian and those Mughal, or at least those first Mughal and famous manuscripts. All these faces are in profile, and they are somehow like puppet shape, not very mellow or very soft. And you can see the hierarchical perspective very, very clearly. Those persons who are in a high ranking are considerably bigger than other persons, although those are closer to us. But here you can see, and you can call it as the hierarchical perspective. And this is the Ramayana from the Rampur Raza Library. This is produced in 3 volumes. This is not very easy to buy from the internet. If you are interested, you can make a contact. I myself made a contact with Rampur Raza Library those days that Dr. Hussein was there, and I made a purchase. But if you want to have access for your library, I'm not sure whether it's now there or not, but in Rampur Raza Library in 3 volumes. And let me finish by after a few slides, just a comparison between some manuscripts. On the right, we have the same episode. This is the Maricha, this is the golden deer, and on the left we have the Akbar's version. You can see this is completely ornamented and twisted. On the right, we have Abdul Rahim's version. As I talked to you, those visual elements are vivid, and in the middle, there is a provincial from a Hindu court. And you can see that this is very simple with lots of free spaces. Another comparison about this Sita Agni Pariksha, which is, you can see on the left again from Akbar's manuscripts. It's full of elements. On the right side again from Abdul Rahim's interpretation of this specific story. And in the middle, on the top, we have Rana Jagat Singh's or Mewar Ramayana from the Rajasthan, which is very famous. And on the below, we have another provincial belonging to Bikaner. But what I want to show you here is that if you take note to this Rana Jagat Singh in the middle on the top, you can see that the Lord Rama is presented here 2 times here. This is, what I call this as multi-episode. And this is very important. Please take note of this. In none of these mobile paintings, you cannot see this approach. Only one person. If we have the Lord Rama, we have the Lord Rama mostly in some several occasions we have. But here, if you have access, this you can have access in British Library. British Library has provided a very good and high quality of this Rana Jagat Singhs, and in most of them you can see this approach. Maybe 3, 4, or even if I'm not wrong, maybe seven times the Lord Rama or a person is presented. Do you know what this comes to our mind? In fact, these mobile, interpretations are just something like a normal painting dedicated to the story, just for, pleasure of the patron. I don't know, maybe just as a duty for those artists. But here, if you take note, you can see that this is like an animation that you can pursue the story from one place to another place like a movie, like an animation. And this shows the deductive, the educational purpose of this copies, which mostly when we have a copy produced in Hindu court, this is just not for elaboration or just, as a duty. This is dedicated to education, religious purposes. So the reader or the watcher or person who is looking at this must learn and must be educated. So this perspective of deductive, approach is very, very, very important in Hindu produced when we compare them with the Mughals. And a good resource I suggest for your library, if you have university library work there, this is the Ramayana, but in French. It was supposed to be translated in English, I'm not sure. This is by Amina Hossein Okada, French scholar in Guillaume Museum in France. This is in 7 volumes, and this is the best example and the best resource for Ramayana miniature paintings from all around India, whether it's Mughal, it's Provençal, and others. 7 volumes full of color, and it's in French. And the publisher is Diane Dusselier. Diane Dusselier in France. If you are later, I can send to you. And at the end, why we are talking about the Ramayana in Persian and why they're translated, there were many reasons. The main reason is that this is a myth. This is the story that it is beyond time and place. On the left, you can see Siyavush in Shahnameh, which is in Persian. In fact, this term as var, passing from, or the fire ordeal in Persian is var in ancient Persian, and Pariksha in Sita's story, you can see. So you can see these similarities between 2 myths. The first is the national epic of Persia, Shahnameh, and here we have this in Ramayana. But now why they were so interested in translating the Ramayana, this is one reason. There were some common elements and passions and interests. And again, this is a life journey. Shahnameh is the life journey of an ideal man. The clash between darkness and brightness. The Ramayana is also a story of man, life journey. And you know, here on the right side, one part of our life journey is love, romance, one approach, one perspective, and this is the best example of Persian literature, Layla Majnun by Nizami Ganjavi. So these elements, these different elements are like something that bound together. And you know, the main reason for those translators, those patrons, why they why they were interested in translating the Ramayana. And another important factor was the presence of Persian language in India for more than 3 centuries. It was, you know, the official language of the court. So it was very natural. It was very common to see that Mahabharata, the Ramayana, Jagbashisht, etc., were translated into Persian language, because it was the language of the court. And at the end, this was a common trend, not just from the Mughal. We can see in Ashoka's, you know, pillars or this and that, the cultural interactions between Iran and India. It was common from ancient times up to now. And when Mr. Modi visited President Rouhani, the ex-president of Iran, we received the one you know, that copy of the Persian translation of Panchatantra. And also when Mr. Modi came to Iran in 2016, he brought with himself a copy of the Ramayana of Farrukh Siyar from the Rampur Raza Library. And this shows that these interactions were existed and still exists. And at the end, we can see that myths help us better understanding. Myths help us better understand our shared humanity. This shared humanity is very, very important and keyword, yet honored the diverse ways we live and make meaning. Thank you very much. My email is here. If you have any question or you need some resources, I'm at your service. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Amin. What a profound presentation you made. We only knew that some translation happened during Akbar's period and subsequently during the period of Farrukh's year. But it was, you presented such a rich heritage, common heritage, shared heritage, and the tradition of making translation and producing Persian manuscripts. It was great. From the foundation side, I regret all the inconveniences, and I assure that we would be editing the videos and while uploading again to the YouTube, and that will have the world-class quality. All the aberrations and the disturbance will be filtered out. That is, we were going to do. We will take 2-3 days in order to edit it. And now we have a distinguished panel. But before I request them, the distinguished panel, I have noted, I was, wondering about the scholar who's with us since the beginning, and we were not introduced, Dr. Amir. So I would request Dr. Amir to tell something about his work, about the whole tradition, and then I would request our distinguished panel, Dr. B.R. Mani and our Gurudev, Professor Deen Bandhu Pandya ji, to tell something about the work that you have produced, Dr. Amin. Anyway, again, a lot of thanks to you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah, Dr. Amir.
Well, thank you very much for giving me a chance to speak, and thank you, Dr. Ramin, for an excellent presentation. Well, I'm as much an Indian as I'm Iranian. Actually, I lived 10 years in India, and I've studied, based on my abilities, Sanskrit, Urdu, Hindi, and I'm familiar with the sacred books of India, and most of my life I've written and taught Indian art, Indian philosophy, and religion. And as an artist, an art historian, my focus has been also the art. So my latest work to be published is a major work on the Ramayana. In fact, while I was studying yesterday, in fact, I had a presentation on the same subject in Iran on an occasion of Indology in Iran. And while presenting, preparing for presentation, I found that anything that was done in Iran was based on one single version of Ramayana, and it was an edited of a Persian version of Ramayana that was about 400 years old. So the work that I'm producing, which is 83 chapters plus one historical chapter of the evolution of Ramayana, it's about 1,000 pages, and it has got 66 color plates that are extensively explained from a point of view of an art historian and an Indologist. So the work will be equally appreciated by the common reader as well as those who are interested in history of art and art itself and India. And the work is almost complete. I've edited it 9 times so far, and the only remaining part is the final, actually the lexicon at the end, which will include all the words and technical terms, names of places, etc., mentioned in the Ramayana. And in my Ramayana, I wanted to present the culture of Ramayana rather than a translation, because my work is not a translation. So from the Ramayana of Narada, which he told it to Valmiki, down to Kamban and Tulsidas, and the spread throughout the Asia, Southeast Asia, etc. I tried to present this very, very beautiful and exceptionally attractive sacred book to Persian audience. Hopefully, I'll find a good collective of publishers and people will benefit from it. And thank you very much for giving me a chance to talk.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Lalit Mishra, you have raised one question. I would like to answer this. I don't want to take your time about the competing with life, with God. Here, in fact, he's talking about his competition with the God, because God loves his creatures and his subjects, in fact. And he's talking that competing with God, my love towards you is in a competition with God, his love towards you.
Okay, Mashihi Panipati, exactly. Thanks for noting the question. If we do have some questions from the audience, please put there in the chat box so that we can put it to Dr. Amin to answer it. I'm, excited. I'm excited to tell something, not only on the cultural and historical fronts, but how Indian and Iranians, our scholars are working, the scientists are also working together in so many things. So I would like to tell one thing more. And because I was following it, so I have something to share. It is about the COVID-19 virus, SARS-CoV-2. So what happened? A latest discovery in this field is the virus can be magnified and can be viewed through bare eyes. So that is the latest discovery. So in this discovery, a women scientist, a youngster from the Jordan was involved. She was actually working under an Indian professor. And when they succeeded, immediately the first person to reproduce the same research was an Iranian scientist, a biochemist from the Tehran University, and his name was, Dr. Aryan. I'm forgetting the uh, title, but he was Dr. Aryan, and his colleague, who again reproduced in the Iran itself, he was again Dr. Aryan. The two Dr. Aryans. So Aryan Tom also, in terms of the Indology, was connecting us, and the research work that this virus can be viewed bare eyes. That is the most fantastic thing which happened uh, for everybody. Otherwise, we have to use the electron microscope in order to view the virus. But this is made possible. This is made possible quite lately in the May and June 2021. So that is what. Now I would request our distinguished panel to, in brief, give their reviews, and then we'll close the session. Thank
Can
you.
can I add a word?
Please, sir. Yeah, please continue.
Yes, well, actually, about the question that was posed to Dr. Ramin regarding the competition, I would like to elaborate a little bit on that. In Islamic terminology, the highest state that the person can reach spiritually is a state that in the Quran it's mentioned that both God loves him and he loves God. And it's a two-way thing. And one explanation for this competition could be the competition of love of the creator for the creature and the creature for the creator. The other one is a competition between oneself and the prophet. We are both at human levels, and we are both having the passion and love for the divine. So it could be translated in that. And Mullah Masih Panipati is excellent in having these riddles that engages your mind, raises certain questions. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. The God loves us, and we love the God, and we are in competition with the God, because we think we do have more love for the creature than the God do have. So it's great, really great. So now our distinguished panel. Over to distinguished panel. So Gurudev, Professor Deepandu Pandey ji.
हिंदी में बोले?
जी हिंदी में बोलिए, हिंदी में बोलिए, not
जी।
English.
मुझे तो बहुत ही रुचि आई ये पूरा सुनकर, बहुत आनंद हुआ।
थोड़ी वॉइस लो है, योर वॉइस इज लो, थोड़ा जोर से बोलिए।
हम तो पूरा रखे हैं अपना 100% पर बोल रहे हैं तो बहुत प्रसन्नता हुई और बड़ा अच्छा लगा। एक बहुत विशेष तरह से अध्ययन भी इन्होंने किया था। देखिए, जब कभी हम लोग ईरान से कुछ चीजें जोड़ते हैं तो हम लोगों के यहाँ एक शब्द बड़ा प्रसिद्ध हुआ है, आर्याना। और आर्याना की दृष्टि से मैं डॉक्टर रघुनाथ सिंह जी को याद करता हूँ, जो काशी के बड़े विद्वान भी थे, वहाँ से मेंबर ऑफ पार्लियामेंट भी थे और बड़ा काम किया उन्होंने, राजतरंगिणी पर काम किया। हमारे बनारस हिंदू यूनिवर्सिटी, काशी हिंदू विश्वविद्यालय से उनको डॉक्टरेट की उपाधि भी उस पर मिली थी। लेकिन मैं जो कहना चाहता हूँ वो ये कि उन्होंने एक पुस्तक लिखी, आर्याना, और वो आर्याना ईरान को रिप्रेजेंट करते, ईरान से जुड़ा हुआ ही वो बात करते हैं। हालांकि वो गए थे अफगानिस्तान, और अफगानिस्तान को वो कभी अलग नहीं मानते थे। ईरान को ईरान, अफगानिस्तान, ये जो हमारा पश्चिमी भारत और पूरा भारत, ऐसे करके वो एक आर्याना शब्द का प्रयोग उन्होंने किया। और हमारी परंपरा में एक शब्द है जिसका उन्होंने उल्लेख किया है अपनी पुस्तक में, आर्यान व आर्यान व, आर्या आधा न उसमें और व। तो ये शब्द हमको बहुत रुचिकर लगा आज की दृष्टि से इसको उपस्थित करने का, कि ईरान का अर्थ है आर्यों के क्रम में आने वाले सब लोग, या वो देश, वहां की जनता, वहां के लोग, वहां का साहित्य, ये सारा आर्या हन्नव। हम लोग के यहाँ आहवय शब्द प्रसिद्ध है, आमतौर से अन्वय शब्द प्रसिद्ध है। आपका अन्वय क्या है, आप किस परंपरा को बिलोंग करते हैं, उसके हैं। तो ये सब शब्द जो हैं वो ईरान में प्रचलित है। उन्होंने ये भी लिखा है कि वहां पर आर्याना होटल, बड़े बड़े होटल्स का नाम आर्याना है, और वहाँ वायुयान से संबंधित जो वो हैं कंपनीज हैं, वो अपने को आर्याना नाम देती हैं। ऐसे कई उदाहरण भी उन्होंने दिए हैं। तो खैर ये एक संबंध जोड़ने की बात हम कर रहे हैं कि आर्यों का जो देश, जैसे हमारे यहाँ आर्यावर्त, तो आर्यावर्त हमारा जो शब्द है वो सीमित हो जाता है। इसकी बड़ी एक अच्छी सी परिभाषा हम लोगों को प्राप्त होती है अपने ग्रंथों में। तो ये सीमित शब्द हो जाता है। इसकी तुलना में आर्याना बेहतर शब्द है, और वो ज्यादा इनकम्पेसिंग, अधिक को एक साथ जोड़ता है। जहां जहां कहीं भी आर्यन या आर्यों का अवशेष है, आर्यों का संबंध है, जुड़ाव है, वो सब उसमें आ जाता है। तो एक तरह से ईरान और आर्याना ये हमारी सबकी धरोहर है। पूरी एशिया की धरोहर अगर हम कहें, एक महत्वपूर्ण धरोहर है, तो ये इसकी संस्कृति है। और उस संस्कृति में राम तो सर्वत्र हैं, तो आज तो विश्वव्यापी हैं राम, और रामायण विश्वव्यापी है। बड़ा अच्छा अवसर हम लोगों को मिला है, हालांकि उसमें बहुत कुछ काम नहीं हुआ। रामायण विश्वकोश, जिसमें मैं संपादक भी हूँ। तो लेकिन आज लौकुश जी से बहुत वर्षों बाद हम समझते हैं भेंट हो रही है। आज वो के नए निदेशक के रूप में अब काम कर रहे हैं। एक जमाना हुआ उनसे भेंट हुए हिंदू यूनिवर्सिटी में। लेकिन रामायण विश्वकोश का ये सब अंग है, जो कुछ आज हम लोगों ने वो देखा और सुना रामनी जी से, रामनी जी से।
If
लेकिन
today, Director Ayodhya Shodh Sansthan,
yes,
Dr. Laukus Dwivedi could made it possible to be with us, so he would have definitely got benefited with the this profound presentation made by Dr. Ramin. And what
yes, yes.
what our Gurudev Professor Deenbandhu Pandey is suggesting, this is all work which is expected to be done in the Ayodhya Research Center, the Ayodhya Shodh Sansthan, that is building a Ramayana encyclopedia. They are in the process of making Ramayana
That's why
encyclopedia.
I'm
Today, ample inputs to
referring all
further
these
develop
things.
and included there. This is what Dr. Deenbandhu Pandey ji is suggesting in his Hindi address. Now I would request to Dr.
I
B.R.
have to
Mani.
say something. I have to say something. देखिए, दो तीन बातें हमको इसमें कहने की थी। वस्तु स्थिति जो जो सब्जेक्ट है उससे जुड़ा हुआ, ये तो सब अभी बाहरी बात रही हमारी। सब्जेक्ट से जुड़ा हुआ मैं ये तो एक बातें उठाना चाहता हूँ। कोई भी लिपि हो, और विशेष रूप से रामायण का जो पर्शियन में अनुवाद हुआ, चित्रण हुआ, अधिक से अधिक अध्ययन चित्रों पर अधिक किया गया है। रामायण के उस टेक्स्ट को बहुत कम आंका गया है और उसका अध्ययन हुआ है जो होना चाहिए, क्योंकि रामायण संस्कृत में है, उसका अनुवाद फारसी में हो रहा है, तो कैसे कैसे शब्दों का परिवर्तन हो जाता है। और बहुत अच्छी बात रामनी जी ने एक कही कि बहुत सी ऐसी चीजें हैं जो भारतीय भावात्मक हैं या धार्मिक हैं, और उनका एक्सप्लेनेशन उसमें इस्लामिक ढंग से दिया गया है। तो वो भी एक बड़ा विचित्र विषय होगा एक अध्ययन का, कि भारतीयता को इस्लाम के ढंग से कैसे एक्सप्लेन करेंगे। हमें कठिन लगता है। हम भारतीयता के माध्यम से इस्लाम को तो कर सकते हैं, लेकिन इस्लाम के माध्यम से हम भारतीय आर्य धर्म को कर सकते हैं, ये मुझे समझ में नहीं आता है। हो सकता है मैं वहां तक पहुंच नहीं पाता क्योंकि मैं पर्शियन नहीं जानता हूँ, लेकिन फिर भी ये एक प्रॉब्लम है अध्ययनकर्ताओं का। दूसरी चीज मैं ये इसमें कहना चाहता हूँ, चित्रों में राम को मैंने देखा हर जगह वो मुकुट पहने हुए दिखाए गए, तो कंसेप्ट ही दूसरा हो जाता है। जब राम वन में जाते हैं और वन में रहने के जैसे तापस वेश में वो आए, उसको तो एकदम छोड़ दिया गया। तो जब उनका तापसी रूप हट जाएगा तो उसमें कितना भाव आप भर पाएंगे जो हमारी भारतीयता का है। जब उनको वेशभूषा में दिखाएंगे, मुकुट के साथ दिखाएंगे, आदि आदि। तो ये भी एक प्रश्न है इनके साथ। लेकिन मुझे बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग जो मेरी बात है, जिसके साथ मैं समाप्त करूंगा, समय ज्यादा हो गया है। देखिए, हम लोगों के यहाँ जो टेक्स्ट प्राप्त है, जो मूल ग्रंथ प्राप्त हैं, उन ग्रंथों में क्षेपक बहुत आ गए हैं। वाल्मीकि रामायण भी शायद जो प्राचीनतम वाल्मीकि रामायण है, जहां तक मैंने पढ़ा है, 11वीं सदी का हाथ का लिखा हुआ रामायण प्राप्त है, वाल्मीकि रामायण, जो जर्मनी के एक संग्रहालय में है। हमारे देश में इसका भी प्रयास नहीं है कि जहां जहां कुछ ऐसी चीजें हो, अरे कम से कम उसकी कॉपीज ही हम अपने यहाँ रखें, हमारे यहाँ आ जाए। वो भी एक काम हम लोगों को लेना चाहिए। इंडोलॉजी फाउंडेशन इसको करे तो बड़ा अच्छा रहेगा।
जी बोले,
तो
हम लोग
हमारा
क्या
कहने
करेंगे?
का अर्थ ये है, नहीं, जो हम बात कहना चाहते हैं वो ये है कि जैसे एक बार इंडोलॉजी फाउंडेशन के क्रम में ही हम लोगों ने गीता पर बात की थी। अब गीता का भी टेक्स्ट जो है, जो हमको प्राप्त है, वो बहुत भिन्न भिन्न है। और जो पर्शियन गीता है, गीता का टेक्स्ट है, वो दो टेक्स्ट का हमने एक काशीराज के संग्रहालय से मैंने उद्धृत किया था, और एक संभवतः ब्रिटिश लाइब्रेरी के उससे मैंने उद्धृत किया था। तो उनमें जो श्लोक है वो परिवर्तित है, मतलब कम अधिक है। इसको मैंने बहुत विशेष रूप से उस दिन डिस्कस किया था। तो हमारा ये कहने का कि हमको अपने टेक्स्ट को सुधारने और उसके अनुरूप इन 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 अनुवादों में भी बहुत कुछ प्राप्त हो सकता है, तो हमें उसका लाभ लेना चाहिए। और वैसे तो भाई गोल्डन बुक, बड़ा अच्छा अच्छा रंग और उसका चित्रण और ये तो आकर्षण तो करता ही करता है, लेकिन यह आकर्षण एक भौतिक आकर्षण है। हम उस काव्य के आकर्षण की बात करते हैं, उस ग्रंथ की भावनाओं के आकर्षण की बात कर रहे हैं, जो हमारे आर्यावर्त में है और संभवतः आर्याना में भी है। बहुत धन्यवाद आप लोगों को।
जी गुरुदेव। So we are getting anyway, when encyclopedia of Ramayana completes, will complete. But anyway, very soon we are getting this 1000 pages work by Dr. Jakir on the Ramayana. So we are just waiting. I would request him to tell us when it is coming or getting released. We would celebrate this moment, and we'll again request him to come on our platform and tell us more about the work. Now over to Dr. B.R. Maliji. So Ayodhya is modern Ayodhya is incomplete without the work of Dr. B.R. Mani, Honorable Dr. B.R. Mani. I would request him to tell something on the subject.
A very good day and Jai Bharat to all the participants. I'm really very thankful to Dr. Ramin Haji Anfar for giving a very
Dr. Mani, sir, little loud, sir, little loud.
For giving a very illustrated and accurate picture of Persian translations, Persian versions of Ramayana. It's quite correct that the earliest translations in Persia, in Persian language, were done during the time of Emperor Akbar. And we know, it is also a fact that during the time of Akbar, it was the need of the hour. And even today, it is the need of the hour to have proper coordination, friendship, interaction between different parts of the society, particularly Hindus and Muslims. And it was because of this that Akbar issued coins with a depiction of Ram and Sita, which is called Ram Sia coin, which is available in Banaras Hindu University in the Kala Bhavan. It is also believed that at the site of Ram Janmabhoomi Babri Masjid in Ayodhya, a Ram Chabutra was allowed to be built by Akbar, which was towards the late 18th century, visited by Joseph Tiefenthaler, who was a Jesuit missionary and traveler from Austria. So Akbar believed in Sulh-e-Kul and Deen-e-Ilahi, which Dr. Ramin has very correctly mentioned. And he has mentioned about 24 Persian versions of Ramayana. We have read some of the versions in Sanskrit or in Hindi, but we since we don't know Persian, we have just read some of the translations of the Persian manuscripts. We have read Valmiki Ramayana, Tulsi Ramayana, which is Ramcharitmanas, or Kamban's Ramayana, and also in Raghuvansh there is a big chapter on the life of Ram. And there are no less than 400 versions of Ramayana, not only produced in India in its different languages, but also in different languages in Southeast Asia, and at least 24 versions in Persia. So such a strong tradition cannot be only a myth. It has to be definitely a historical happening which happened in the past, about which archaeologists and other scholars are trying to find out the exact period. We know that Akbar had ordered for translation, which is mentioned by Abul Fazl, translation of Ramayana. And it was to dispel the hatred between Hindus and Muslims at that time. This is relevant today. The first Persian Ramayana by Mullah Abdul Qadir Badayuni, which was, I think, came out in 1589, was asked by Akbar to be produced, and it contains, as Professor Dr. Ramin has said, 176 illustrations, and it is in Savai Man Singh Palace Museum, Jaipur. We have some very interesting paintings, those under those 176, which were made by the famous artists, painters of the time, like Basaman or Lal, Keshav, and Miski. And then he has mentioned about another version which came in 1593, which belonged to Hamida Banu Begum, also known as Mariam Makani, whose seal is there. And then there are 349 pages of the translation of Khane Khana's copies, which are preserved in the Friar Art Gallery in Washington. And there is a note by Abdur Rahim Khan Khana also on it, who says that Aqib Khan prepared it with the help of Dev Misr. Latest contribution is by Dr. Amir, who is very much present today amongst us. And I have been given to understand that 83 chapters are in press for publication. And I would like to make a very pertinent comment on Dr. Ramin's lecture. He has mentioned that Akbar had, at the time of his death, 24,000 manuscripts, which in those times amounted to rupees 65 lakhs. It's a fact which was not known to many of us. And then he has also given a very correct view about the profile pictures, profile figures of human beings in the paintings. Even 3/4 view. And also mentioning that there are more battle scenes in different versions. So these are some very important aspects of the illustrated manuscripts of Ramayana in Persian language. The Farrukhsiyar's Ramayana paintings has the influence of Rajasthani style as compared to Akbar's paintings, which was more or less Indian as well as Persian in its style. So these are some of the very important features about which Dr. Ramin has spoken. Time is short and I may not be able to speak much about the details at present, particularly about what Mishraji has asked about Ayodhya, and it is very well known, so I'm not going to speak on that. Thank you very much.
So now I would invite Dr. Gyanendra Rai to give word of thanks to Honorable Dr. Ramin, our distinguished panel, and Dr. Amir, and everybody else who joined us today.
Thank you very much, Lalitji. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Ramin Ajanford for this informative and thoughtful lecture, who underlined the cultural diversity through the manuscript of Ramayana depicted in Persian. I also express my gratitude to Dr. Lokush Dwivedi, Director Ayodhya Soch Sansthan, who is presiding this session, for taking out time in the midst of his busy schedule and recommending him to be present among us. To bless all of us with his blessings, the word renowned scholar, Guruvar Acharya Professor दीनबंधु पांडे जी, गुरुवर के चरणों में मैं सादर प्रणाम निवेदित करता हूं. For his important academic suggestions in today's sessions, thanks to Professor B.R. Maniji. Also, many thanks to Lalit ji for organizing this important precious lectures. Among with all of you, I also express my gratitude to all of you, as well as to all the scholars and students and Indology Foundation family who made this lecture successful by joining virtually. Thank you.
I again, express my regret for whatever the problem we experienced, not at our end, but our chief guest in. Anyway, so he's just informed us that he would make a separate video message, and that while editing, we will include his lecture with his speech and his. He made certain proposals from the Ayodhya Soch Sansthan perspective that will be merged, and then final video will be released. So we'll take 2 to 3 days to make it, and then we'll make today's session private so that nobody can watch it after we close it today. That is what. But it was really a great session, great learning regarding Persian manuscript, tradition of Persian manuscripts of Ramayana, illustrating art and decorating it, work of Dr. Amir, everything. I was just imagining what could have been those 6.5 million rupees today in our after this inflation in 21st centuries. So what was the degree of devotion that Akbar had? And this is something which needs to be highlighted, because we know the medieval period of history is a history of conflicts. But if there are certain drops of drops of panacea which may bring the different cultures and the traditions together, that will make the future, the shared future of India and all our neighboring countries. So thanks again to Dr. Rami, um, uh, um, Dr. Amir, Dr. B. R. Mani, Gurdev, Professor Deen Pandey, and everybody. So I hope so. I hope to meet you again, and next time in a better way. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Thank you. Thank you.
Aman, let us save it. Yeah, sir.
Very
Thank you.
nice.
And we'll let us work on the video. We'll re-release it. Thank you, sir.